Hi, I'm Steve Backley and welcome to ATHLÈTES, MONDIAUX.
Hi everyone, welcome to the ATHLèTES MONDIAUX podcast. ATHLèTES MONDIAUX is French for athletes of the world. In this podcast, I interview track and field athletes from all around the world in their native language when I speak it. My guest today is Steve Backley, one of the best javelin throwers ever. Steve is a 4-time European champion, 3-time Olympic medalist, former world record holder, and current British record holder in the javelin. In this episode, Steve tells us how he got started with track and field, how he used visualization to train mentally as he was dealing with an injury, but also about the growth mindset he finds so important. You're listening to the original interview in English, but the interview is also available dubbed in French if you understand French better than English. Enjoy! Hi Steve, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Likewise.
You had a remarkable career with so many accolades, 4 European Championship gold medals in a row, 3 Commonwealth golds. You're the first British athlete to have medaled at 3 consecutive Olympics. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, good homework.
Does any particular moment stand out looking back now?
Do you know what? That's a tricky one. The simple answer is actually no. Most athletes have that luxury of having that kind of one standout moment. You know, I'm thinking someone like Kelly Holmes, who, in 2004 had a series of near misses and then had a glory day. Loads of examples, right? Mine was kind of a bit of slow burn, had some great moments, but I find it hard to differentiate between a series of good Olympic performances, 2 silver medals. The European golds were clearly a highlight. World records in my early career. So the simple answer to that is no. But there's a longer answer based on what I'm saying. I suppose the thing I'm most proud of in many ways is the longevity.
Yeah. So we know you as a javelin thrower, obviously, but you started as a runner, right?
Yeah. Going back a lot of years. Not a particularly successful one,
Okay.
but it introduced me to the sport in every event. So I was that club guy who jumped around from a bit of sprinting, 400 meters. It was my main running event at county level. Realized I didn't have really what it took, but was turning up to run the race, then run the relay. So I was round all day. So then you get that question: would you go and mind throwing a hammer or doing the high jump? And I could sort of turn my hand loosely, but it was only when I really was asked to fill in for the javelin, and I can remember that day vividly because it all just made sense. I walked into the javelin runway and it was like, oh, this is my home. This is it. Well, this is where I'm meant to be.
So love at first sight.
Love at first sight. From my perspective, the event, not so much. I had to work on that. I had to, charm it a little and do some work. I wasn't a natural. It didn't fly out the stadium first time. I was average, not even. I was quite poor to begin with, but it did make sense. And I could see a pathway to improve.
Okay. Was your dad your coach then?
Yeah. I often tell the story because my dad was my first coach, which is always interesting because he didn't know anything about the javelin, literally. He knew nothing. But he was a runner, a decent runner. He ran 151, 880 yards back in the day and a 240 marathon runner. So he was a decent runner. So he had the ethos of working hard now to gain something in the future, that whole delayed gratification, whatever you want to call it. The principles were there for training hard, working hard, improving, having a goal, setting a goal, trying to achieve it, that sort of stuff. And he created a platform to do just that, which I'm immensely grateful for.
And when did you start training with your next coach, John Trower?
Yeah, John Trower was then the coach that kind of really helped me on that world stage. Once I think I was about 18. I was already a sort of 70-meter thrower. In my 17-year-old, 18, I threw 78 meters. I think it was a world age best at the time. And that was around the time that John started helping me. But he also came from that principle of keeping it simple. We weren't overly analytical around technique. I had a reasonable eye for watching people and I suppose modeling some nuances of how they made the javelin fly. And I kind of translated them and we'd talk, and he had some basic principles that really fitted my physiology. He was I suppose, a modern coach in many ways. He would create an open platform for an athlete to explore their potential. you hear javelin coaches and they'll talk endlessly about, the position of the angle of the right foot and where it should land in relation to the center of gravity. We didn't go down that route.
Never?
No. We had some basic principles. We wanted to have a high hand. We wanted to get the right foot forward, create lots of width. So I would pull the javelin, not hit the javelin. It was quite broad brush, We didn't really zoom in and have these particular ways. Very important to learn, how to compete. I think what was particularly helpful was very regularly we would have like a moment in the training. It was like, come on then, let's test this. Find 2 meters. Go and find 2 meters. Work it out. You work it out. Go on. And I think that puts you in really good stead as a performer when you put it on that into a major champ, certainly with any competition context, having practiced the ability to just go, okay, now, whatever that is, trust myself and make it happen, which doesn't come from an analytical side of your brain. It's much more, big picture.
Right. And did you have other people in the group training with you, or was it just you?
I suppose the other thing that coincided with a big breakthrough that I had around that 19 years of age, turning 20, around that time, as I moved to train at Loughborough University in the Midlands in England. Great facilities, great people, lots of expert knowledge, certainly better than my understanding of training, and again, on a wider level as well. So, I remember going to join the jumpers on a Monday night for the circuit training. I joined the climbers on a Tuesday night for upper body. We go up and down the ropes and all the upper body strength stuff. So it wasn't too specific, but just good athleticism. And I think that was a great environment to create a broad base to the pyramid physically and just become skillful across different movement patterns. But then have that specific knowledge, because I'd meet John there once a week and then have a training group that would learn how to Olympic weightlift with Olympic bars that I hadn't had previously. But yeah, Loughborough was a great base around sort of 19, 20, 21, which are probably my best years in some ways, looking back.
Is it true your coach once told you you've got the top part of a 100-meter thrower and the bottom part of an 80-meter thrower, so you're 90-meter thrower?
Okay, so now that was actually someone I worked with later in my career, because fast forwarding a lot of years, it was Jan Pospisil who coached Jan Zelezny, who said that. And he's right. I'm laughing because he's right. I could do upper body stuff, medicine ball. I would beat people comfortably. I'm just like, that's easy. Every time I did bench press, I could put on another 5 kilos to just get strong. My upper body was ready. And I could create separation in my shoulder. My legs, I couldn't get strong. I wasn't great jumping. I was okay sprinting with the running background, not fantastic. So, yeah, that was my cross to bear.
So, as you said earlier, you were really good, really young. Are there things you know now you wish you'd known then?
I suppose, yes, because that's the nature of life, isn't it? You continue to grow and you must retain that growth mindset to adapt and understand and evolve. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I think injury plays a major part in every athlete's life. If you're going to stick around for 15 years as an athlete, you better work out how to avoid injury, to optimize those 15-year window. Okay, that's a long window. If you're lucky enough to have that larger window to express your physicality. If you can stay healthy that 15 years, that's the meaning of life for an athlete. So to answer your question, I suppose I would have probably paid more attention to avoidance of injury. I remember at sort of 18, 19, I remember I threw a world junior record when I was 19, 79 meters, 50. The following year, I threw 85 meters, 90 for a British record. And I remember thinking, what's this thing of injury? I hear athletes talking about injury. What? It doesn't hurt. It's a wonderful feeling. You run in. Every time I picked the thing up, it would land another meter further. Broke the world record the following year. I'm like, injury? What? It's like, that's not for me. Then you learn.
Yeah.
Because you get that one first injury, whatever it is, and you realize that you're much more vulnerable than you perceived. Our business partners are with Roger Black, and we design and deliver performance days. And we talk a lot about that in terms of resilience and tenacity and that just ability to bounce back. You almost have to go through that. But I suppose in a perfect world, you learn from other people's mistakes, not your own, right? Most important thing is that we learn. So yeah, to be able to avoid injury, that would be my simple answer, even though it's not a simple thing to do.
So, how can other people learn from your mistakes? What do you wish you'd done differently to avoid injuries?
I believe I got to a decent level as a javelin thrower without that much physical ability. I didn't have anywhere near the potential of the guys I was up against. But I created a technique that worked for me that stood strong under pressure, so I could compete at major championships. And I think part of that is around being open to understanding the technique and what's really going on. I see some people making really basic errors at the very highest level, costing them lots of distance. So what can people learn? I suppose in simple terms, there are two ways of growing, aren't there? There is increasing your potential and then increasing your ability to tap into your potential, but if we can see it that way. So that's the nature of athletics, right? You train for 8 months a year, you compete for 3, you have a month off. Okay, you might have the indoor season where you come out of training. And I think an unprecedented amount of focus is put on the building of the capacity rather than the tapping into it. Because if you keep building the capacity, you're fragile. Because if you don't have the skills, the rhythms, the techniques, the balance, the posture, the symmetry, all that stuff that makes you not only resilient, but able to tap into that potential. So, in simple terms, I think there are shortcuts to find distance that people are missing. Again, it's easy to say, less easy to find, but they're out there.
Do you think you were too good too young? Were you ready for the pressure?
Yeah, I'm kind of come from the school of thought that if someone's ready, they're ready. I struggle when people say, oh, they're too young, don't expose them to... Kids love competing. You put 2-3-year-olds in a room, they'll start competing over something. Explore your talent while you can. You don't know when it's going to disappear. You don't know how long it's going to stay with you. You don't know what's around the corner. So explore it, optimize it. And also, we don't really know what our physiology is going to give us. There are so many athletes who are at their peak in their early 20s. There are so many, others in their early 30s or anything in between. And we don't really know where our sweet spot. We do with hindsight. That's easy.
Yeah. What would you say were your biggest challenges?
A lot of it was actually believing in myself enough. I was constantly thought, imposter syndrome, thinking, am I really good enough to stand with these guys? Look at the shape and size of these people, athleticism. And so I had to constantly give myself that reminder that, or not even a reminder, just pretend that I was good enough and then go, actually, I got away with it. I didn't get found out. It's okay. I kept up, or maybe I beat them. Wow. Because it's quite it's an audacious thing to do, is to stand and really believe that you're going to be the best in the world. To truly believe that is a massive challenge if you're a normal person. And I do consider myself pretty normal, possibly too normal at times. That was probably my biggest challenge. Because the challenge with that mentality, if you come from that school of thinking, with that type of person, is you can invent it for a day and you have a great day, but you go back to normal again, and then you got to reinvent it, and then you go back to normal again. So you're constantly having to step up and prove yourself, and to yourself and to everyone else. And it's like, that's tiring. That's tough. I'm not saying I would have rather have been one of those people who just swans around there like that all their time, because I think they have their challenges as well. But
yeah. So you struggled with that the entire time, even after breaking the world record or winning an Olympic medal?
Yeah. 100%. But part of that is I was one of these athletes who, I don't actually know how typical this is, but I was probably around 10% worse in training. So I knew if I threw 80 meters in training, I could throw 88 meters in a competition, thereabouts. And I'm talking maxing out at 80 meters in training. So you can imagine now you're at a training session and you're going, where's it going to come from? I'm the same, but this is 3 days before an Olympics. I struggled with it. I remember early 90s thinking, why can't I replicate this? And that was, I think, a big part of the maturing of, as a person, as an athlete, is to accept and understand, or at least, appreciate that you don't have to. You don't have to preempt the competition body in training. You'd think you could. I think you would be able to get close. But to be 10% off. I remember in 1990, I broke the world record. And in training, I couldn't get over 75 meters.
Wow.
In the shape of my life, I couldn't get the thing to go over 75 meters for about a month. in, let's say, April, May, somewhere around that time. First competition, 88 meters. Second competition, third competition, 89 meters. Mid-season, 90 meters. Where does that come from? If someone could work out what that is and bottle it and sell it, you've cracked it. And of course, it's a bit of adrenaline. It's a bit of desire. It's a bit of focus. It's the two trees in the rainforest scenario. You're surrounded by people and it's do or die. And that is worth 10%, which always amazed me looking back, thinking about it now, even more so, because I kind of go, really? That was quite cool. But also daunting going back to the training when you're going, I've got a competition this weekend. I hope it's still there. Like, really?
Yeah. You use visualization quite a lot, right?
Massive.
How did it start?
I worked out quite early on through those early injuries I talk about that if you keep throwing the javelin, looking for perfection of technique, you're going to break down. If you're throwing in earnest over, let's say, 30 throws a week, maybe a few more if you're particularly resilient, you're going to break down. So, when you compare that to other sports, tennis, golf, or, a golfer might hit 1,000 balls a day looking to perfect the technique. You have to learn to visualize. Otherwise, you don't improve. So you have to preempt the future in your mind's eye by running over scenarios, techniques, forces, making them very, very real. So I bought into the principle very early on and then had an opportunity to really understand that at a much deeper level, working with a guy called Paul McKenna when I was injured in the run up to the 96 Olympics. Ruptured my Achilles tendon, had surgery and kind of was out. I nearly gave up, but using visualization came away with a medal. It's here somewhere. I should have had it ready. I don't wear it every day. That Olympic silver that would have been so easy to walk away thinking 14 weeks prior, I was lying on the operating table to go to an Olympic rostrum was, because of other people's help and the understanding that visualization, the ability to see in your mind's eye exactly what it is that you're looking to achieve in immense detail to the point where you can not only see it, but you can feel it. And then, of course, trust it under pressure is a skill that is available to all of us. And the best thing is it's free. That's what I love about it. It's a free skill. So I do bang on about the technique because I think it has to be the number one tool in any athlete's kit bag.
So you did it alone or did you need guidance?
Both. Yeah, we really explored it. Really explored it with Paul McKenna and then Dave Collins, and John Trower was a huge supporter of it as well. I had a series of great people around me. So there was some guided, majority non-guided. The big breakthrough actually, and this is one of those crazy nuances of visualization. For years I was told, because in the textbook it would say you lie down or sit down, symmetrical, hands by your side, relax, center, da-da-da. In one particular season, we did a session, we were testing the ability to visualize against the clock. So I would visualize my perfect throw, which was a previous world record. So this was around the mid-90s. So it was the throw from 3 years prior. And we digitized that and had it timed so that it had a start, a middle, and an end that was exact. And I want to say it was something like 5.63 seconds, very precise. Each contact was digitized. We gave it a sound and I would visualize and hear the sound whilst I did the visualization, etc. So we went in, we were in detail. And I was doing this sitting down, and my variance, so we were trying to reduce the variance on that visual. And it was like plus or minus half a second. It went like 6.4, 4.8, 5.2. So it's like, it doesn't seem great. We didn't know, but we didn't seem great. I then, for some reason, I think it was working with Dave Collins, we did a session and I stood up and just put my hand up, again, closed eyes, ran the visual. And it was like 5.62, 5.61, 5.63, 5.62. And we went, wow, really? That simple change just blew our minds. And I'm not suggesting that applies to everyone. And I suppose the encouragement is find your way. And there are ways out there. It's just having that growth mindset to appreciate that there are different ways. And these subtle nuances within techniques make a massive difference. And that applies to everything, by the way, not just visualization.
Yeah, you talk a lot about the growth mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it's not language I would have used as an athlete, but I do believe that is fundamental. It's part of what we help people with now, because everyone wants to think they have a growth mindset, of course, but the reality is we don't. But it's, I think, one of the most important aspects of long-term growth. And also hold my hands up as well. Early career, I didn't have that. I remember breaking the world record and going, let's not go crazy. If we just do what we did last year, stay the same. There's no point taking any risk. That was the biggest error with hindsight. So continuing to grow. I mean, only talking, tiny margins, small steps are fine, but the ability to stay hungry for growth it always makes me laugh. I'm a big golf fan. Golfers get criticized. They'll win a tournament and then change their technique. People go, that's crazy. What are they doing? But they have to. You have to change. You have to change to grow. Doing what you've always done, you don't stand still. You go backwards.
Right.
So yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of it.
You threw over 90 meters 4 times. Am I correct?
Oh, now you've got me. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, okay.
6.
Okay, well, I'm sorry then. I got it wrong.
No. I mean, depends if you count per competition, because I did 2 over 90 in Sheffield once in 91. Yeah, maybe 5 competitions, I think. A few late 89s as well.
Okay.
They don't count though, right? I hear you.
So what was different in these throws?
I suppose it's the sport. You're looking for everything to come together at that one moment in time in terms of your behaviors, your attitude, your mindset, your hunger, your focus, and then the environment. So the conditions, the wind, the temperature, your skills, your knowledge, your technique, your balance, your posture, your rhythm, then, the alignment, the javelin. There may be 10, 15 factors, 20 maybe, I don't know, but there's probably another 1,000. And there's probably a bunch of those we don't even know exist that have to align to that day. And most of them are in our control. And one thing I'm particularly proud of in many ways is that I had my best days at championships on the whole. Not every time, but, if I look back at the season, just looking at each season, my best performance was at championships. I think that's the skill. If you know the answer to that question for you, you're in a really good place because you have the opportunity to be good under pressure. And that's probably the thing I love most about the sport in retirement, is looking back in and seeing someone in a pressure situation and going, oh, okay, now we're in the fun zone. This is where it really matters. And some people grow and some people shrink. Some people stay the same. And part of it is believing and if I said it's because I have a green jumper on, that's why. And I believe that unequivocally. That's a factor as well, right? I'm not suggesting it is, but that's a factor. Believing unequivocally that you're right is a massive part. It helps if it's the right data.
Yeah. And how much running did you do? Because unlike the hammer, the shot, or the discus, there's a running element in the javelin.
Yeah, I've always sort of thought the javelin sits as an event. Of course, we typically divide our sport up into sprints, middle distance, long distance on the track. And you kind of go, okay, throws and jumps. The reality of the javelin probably sits between those 2 field event categories. It's more of a jump/throw because of what you've said. The running is a massive part because it's the way we join those forces from the floor, obviously, to your throwing hand, and what's in between that, and the rhythm of contacts are what sets the pathway for us to be able to transfer force. I always sort of see there's 2 types of javelin throws. There's those who can create force, and if you go down that route, you better be really good at it. You've got to have some superpowers, and there are those out there. The way for more normal physical types like myself is the ability to transfer force. So to transfer force, we have to be obviously create momentum, run well in good positions, in stable positions, and have good awareness and contact and posture, and then be able to put our body in the right place to turn it into a catapult.
The javelin design rules changed in 1986?
Yeah.
And you started before that, right?
I started before that, but I was 15, 16 when they changed. So I didn't really get going with the old style javelin.
Okay.
I did have one. I would think it was the next year I was going into the senior rank. So I had one and, it was quite different. It would fly. I probably in a way was the first era along with Jan Zelezny, I suppose, in a way. He was a couple of years older than me. Separatu, there were a few that were the kind of the first era of people who grew up just with the new specification javelin. So it's all we knew. Before that, you see videos of old style javelin, and the javelin would be coming down to land and it would go up again. Like, whoa, I hit a third. It's just kind of, wow, that's crazy. And they were getting good. And then obviously Uwe Hohen threw 104 meters 80. And that's what brought about the change.
Mm-hmm. You won 4 European goals in a time when the event was dominated by Europe.
Yeah.
It's no longer the case.
Boy, has that changed. Yeah.
Does it mean things are going well outside of Europe, or things are not going well in Europe? Or is it both?
They're not necessarily going badly in Europe. It's just the rest of the world has caught on to the beauty of the event. To have a Kenyan in Julius Yego win the World Championships, and then Neeraj, obviously Chopra, to win in Tokyo, and then you have a Pakistani gold medalist. You're like, wow. And of course, Kishon Walcott from Trinidad and Tobago in 2012. It's been an amazing decade of globalization of the event, and there are a bunch of explanations for that. I think the most simple one is the internet and the ability to introduce and study and understand the event. The event's in really good shape because of it. Yeah, it's an exciting time, really exciting time. World Championships really mean something now.
Yeah.
The European and Worlds were a similar event back in my day. They're not anymore.
Mm-hmm. With Neeraj Chopra's win in Tokyo, there might be a lot of young Indians watching him on YouTube.
100%. And I read the other day he was the most written about athlete in 2022. Which is something when you think of the year we've had and the success and the world records, 3 world records, whatever it is. It's been an amazing year, but he's the most written about athlete. Wow. It's really exciting to where it goes from here, though. That's the exciting bit with Neeraj, being that role model and the potential for over 1 billion people in the population to have that role model. It's really exciting.
How is it sharing the track with runners, is it a problem to focus when you never really know when you're going to throw?
No. Do you know what? I never even noticed them.
Okay.
Never even noticed. I remember there was one time I got a bit thrown. It was actually in Olympic Games, the last time in Athens, 2004. I think the 5th round. And they brought out the starting blocks for the relay. I can't remember who it was, but an athlete just plonked their blocks right in the middle of the javelin run up. I was like, this is my space. I visualized this, that's a new thing. That was, I wasted some energy on that one. But look, I think if you're distracted by that sort of stuff, you're probably not as focused as you should be.
Okay. Did you have favorite meet?
Outside of championships?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, I love the championships. I mean, it was all about the major. And I love competing on home soil because athletics was pretty big back then. We had some great crowds. But to answer your question, I suppose Finland. I just loved competing in Finland. I remember the first competition in 1989 going into the Olympic Stadium in Helsinki. And Separatu was world champion at the time, 87 world champion, right? He was the big man. And 60,000 people were in the Helsinki Olympic Stadium chanting his name. Seppo, like this. I'm like, wow. And I just remember thinking, he's got no chance. I loved that situation of just not wanting to spoil the party, but just going, this is it. I loved that. And I won that day, surprisingly. And then I loved it even more.
Were you friends with your opponents, or was it impossible to be friends with them?
I was friends, yeah, always. It's quite a lonely sport, a lonely event if you stay inside your bubble. You have to. You're 15 years traveling, competing, So I joined Jan Zelezny. I trained Jan. He was my main nemesis in a way. So I joined him in the last 5 or 6 years of training. I joined him in training camp.
Okay.
We'd be in the Sierra Nevada mountains in November, December. We'd then be in somewhere in South Africa in January, February, come back to Europe, March, April. I'd spend time. I train with him. And also, you can compete against your friends. It's not an enemy thing, is it? I think the top end of sport, it becomes there's a lot of camaraderie. It's like, it is about competing, but it's not at all costs. It's like, I think the top end of athletics, athletes tend to love the engagement of competing. You win, I win, that kind of, let's go again. Let's do this. Because then that's sustainable, right? If it has to be enemy, me win. Like, no, you drive yourself mad.
Yeah. What was the idea behind your book, the books you wrote? That was in 2012?
I've done a few books actually. So I wrote a book in 96 called The Winning Mind. I'm big into the psychology of performance. I love the principles that help people get their head straight, quite simply, because I think the world's super confusing, and athletics offers a fairly simple platform for us to be able to do what we do, but people make it so confusing. So, The Winning Mind in 96, then wrote The Little Book of Inspiration with Roger Black in 2012. But I think the one you're referring to was The Champion in All of Us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to just find a slightly different way to share messages. So the idea was to come up with a story, a fictional story about 4 fictional characters who meet a guy called Coach, and they all have these idiosyncrasies that hold them back. Not enough passion, not enough belief, and not enough clarity. And they're the 3 for me. If you want something enough, you believe in yourself enough, and you know what to do, you're going to do okay. But they all lacked one of those key principles of those 3. And so it's a story of them getting together and then Coach giving them some experiences, because to learn something, we have to have an experience to change our belief. And then when our beliefs change, we can change our behaviors. Our behaviors don't just change because we want them to. We have to go through some sort of an experience, or we don't have to, but that's the most powerful way of creating change. So it's a story about their journey. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun writing it.
I have one final question for you. That is the question I ask all of my guests. The podcast is called ATHLÈTES, which means athletes of the world, because what I love the most about track and field is that it is a universal sport.
Right.
So my question to you is, what do you love the most about track and field?
What do I love the most about track and field is the purity of it. I watch other sports and I just think it lacks what athletics has, which is pure. It's objective, right? You have a winner, you have silver medals, bronze medals, there's a cup. It's pure from that point of view. And very few sports are. And the other thing is that you stand alone, and pretty much everyone in the world does it. 205 countries at the World Championships, I think. To go up against the whole world on your own in a pure sport where nobody can have an opinion. Well, they can, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And, the debate over, is Lionel Messi the best football player or the best Argentinian even? Or was it Diego Maradona? Is he the GOAT from Argentinian football? It's like, and they'll debate for hours. It's like, well, we know in athletics. We know.
Yeah.
Because there's a stopwatch, there's a measuring tape. You can't argue. And I love the simplicity of that and the purity of it.
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to leave us with?
No, just I enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for the little trip down memory lane. It was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matilda.
And that's it for today. Steve, if you're listening, thank you for your time. And to all of you listening, I hope you liked the episode. If you're interested, you'll find links to Steve's books in the show notes. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to support the podcast, please check the link in the description. Thank you. Talk to you in the next episode. Bye-bye.